Good afternoon. Today is the 19th day of March 2017, and our continuing series, Interviews with Aurovilians. And today I'm very pleased to have Mona with us. Namaste, Mona. A little bit about Mona from my experience. She is working with Oro University in Surat and has designed the Integral Yoga Center. She's a marvelous architect and a very refined lady as well. And I've had the honor to work with her on the horticultural aspects. So today we'll hear from her. The first question that we always ask, of course, is how did you first hear of Sri Aurobindo and Mother? Or was it Auroville that you first heard about?
Yeah, I would say I first heard of Auroville as an architecture student. I was studying in Ahmedabad in SEPT, School of Architecture. And Auroville was already known there as a concept. And many years later, I realized that there was always a photo of Mother hanging in my grandmother's house.
Oh.
But we never talked about it because it was one of these mothers sitting on a chair. And as a small kid, you look up and you say, who is this lady, funny lady sitting there? And she didn't look really Indian. But I never really questioned it. And many years later, I found out that my aunt, who also was an architect from MS University, Baroda, and she passed out something in 67 or something as an architect. And she actually came and worked with Roger for 6 months as an architect.
Oh, isn't that
Yeah,
interesting?
she wanted to join the ashram. And then she stayed here, and she even got some books from Mother, which was signed by Mother and all that. And somehow it didn't work out for her. And when I asked her many years later, she had almost kind of forgotten the whole episode. But what my mother tells me, she didn't like the food there in the ashram, so she came. But I don't really believe that. I mean, I think that's only. But anyway, she settled in America now. But she did give me. I did find her books actually, which she left in India.
Signed by Mother.
Signed by Mother, and discovered by Popo very unusually in our cellar after I think in 2000 something, maybe 1999 or 2000.
Gosh.
And so I have those books now. So I remember Mother's photo when I was a kid, but nothing about Sri Aurobindo or I hadn't heard anything. I only knew about Auroville, and then slowly when I came here to do my training, then I got to know more about them.
And how did you decide on architecture for your career?
Oh, that's what I often wonder. How is one supposed to decide at 16 what one wants to
At
be?
16 you started?
Yeah, it's very strange because actually you just already decide in 10th standard, whether you want to do, science or commerce or art, more or less you have to decide. And then in 11th, 12th, you already have to know. So, you're about, say, 15, 16. You have to know what you want to do. So you have to either decide biology or, if you want to go for engineering or you want to go for arts. You have to take there are 3 streams, commerce, science, and arts. You have to decide. In my case, it was slightly different because I was studying in Delhi and I could decide between biology and technical drawing. And since I'm, as you know, my surname is Doctor, and a lot of almost my whole family is doctors. And so my great grandfather was a doctor, and all my uncles and nephews and cousins are all doctors. So my mother, whose sister was a doctor, they didn't want me to be a doctor. So she said, no, you should never be a doctor as a woman. If you're a doctor, you'll have to marry a doctor, and then you'll have no social life. You'll be always busy with your career.
Mm-hmm.
So and she because the other sister was an architect, and I was good at drawing, and I was kind of artistic, and so they thought it was a good line to go for. So I took technical drawing instead of biology in 11th and 12th in Delhi.
In Delhi?
Yeah, in Delhi Public School. I was studying for 2 years. And so when I came back and wanted to apply for engineering or architecture, or other, like NID, National Institute of Design, I had no choice almost in Gujarat, because in Gujarat, if you don't have biology, you can't do engineering. And I had not taken biology, I had taken technical drawing. So my choices were very limited. I could go to NID, I could go to architecture, or I could go to BITS Pilani or things like that. Anyway, so I applied to NID and to architecture in CEPT and MS University and there were not so many choices like today. I mean, it was much less. And luckily I got into architecture. And
was it difficult to get in?
oh yeah, it was a big competition. I think that time there were like 30 seats and there were 900 applications. And then from that, I think so, but something like that. And then I know 60 were called for interview, personal interview. So we had to do 3 days tests, all kinds of, we had to draw. I remember things like draw a parrot's foot and a peacock's foot or something like that. So we had to see if we had a scale, how a claw of a bird looks, or a pressure cooker and something else, or how does a pressure cooker work? Make a drawing of that, all kinds of things. Or a still life, they put some cubes and we had to draw them. And then eventually there was an interview in CEPT in the school. And I remember I went with my big paintings. I was so embarrassed going there with all these oil paintings, and we had to sit before 6-7 people, and they interviewed us. Yeah, and then they selected 30. And I was considered as an outsider. I wasn't considered Gujarati because I studied from Delhi school, so it was a central board. I was in Gujarat board, so there were limited seats for. So it was quite tough, but coming back, how does one decide? I don't know. I was just very lucky, I think, and I think architecture is like one of the best, at least for me, a beautiful profession, because it just combines so many things, and it gives you so many possibilities to combine philosophy, psychology and art and mathematics, science. It's like it's wonderful. It's never-ending education, discovery.
I remember we talked the other day about Goethe's quote.
Oh yes, Goethe is our famous architecture's frozen music, right?
Yes.
So that was the first year in CEPT. It was like all over the place. There were certain things which were like very set. So we had to read Hermann Hesse. And we had to know this famous quote, and certain things which were kind of inculcated by the senior, not by the teachers. We heard all these from people around the students, and I remember writing it on my board, but never really understood what it meant until 20 years later, when I actually experienced doing a building, and I realized how it's a piece of music. If you it's a rhythm that you build into your with the cottage restaurant, like I said. And that was a real grace. I mean, I really felt cottage restaurant was one of those projects where I felt I was working for Mother, because she started that.
Yes. I knew Gampatram.
Yes, I think I've seen them, because 1987 when I first came, I think they were still there, the brothers. I'm not sure, or maybe not. But I remember going to that old place, sitting there on the top with all the crows and under the trees. And I always say my biggest compliment I get for that building is when they say, we remember the old cottage when we go there, because I tried to make sure
you kept that.
That
feeling.
Yeah, I wanted that on the terrace, and then I said, the crows must also come, because there was so much a part of being
there.
Now,
when you graduated, what did you do after that?
Oh no! Before graduation, actually, Auroville already kind of hit me. So it was in 87, during my third year, that we have to decide where we want to intern. So we have to do 6 months of internship in any office. So that was like 7th or 8th semester, 7th semester. So we have 10 semesters in total. So in the 6th semester, it happened in December 86 that we had a National Association of Students of Architecture, which is a very large convention. Now it is like 3,000 students. At that time it was much less. But architecture schools from all over India would come together, and they would have a student program. But there are a lot of trophies which were prestigious and named after.
Where would you meet?
Every time in different schools. So CEPT, School of Architecture there, we don't participate because it clashes with our curriculum and our exams and all that. But this particular year, 86, we did participate. And I was one of the team of students who came to Chennai. It was in Anna University, Chennai, and yeah, and then Laurie Baker had come there. The famous English architect who was living in Kerala, and he became also very famous because he introduced a lot of low cost methods, and really he was working a lot with the government and with doing housing for poor people, etc. So he was there, and I was doing a lot of that time. I was doing electives which were low cost, and I was very much into this. Yeah, doing something for the poor, and so I did done. So I talked to him and I said I would like to intern with you, and he was already like quite old. It was 86. He must have been maybe 80 or less, little bit less than 80. So he said, no, I'm not taking trainees anymore. And then just then some of his older students came and they had got photos of Popo's work from Auroville in vaults and domes, which he was building at that time in Auroville. So he was showing, and then he said, yeah, why don't you go and work with Popo Pingel, he's also doing low cost. And he showed me some photos, and I'd heard Popo's name because he had already published this book on rural India, which was rammed earth housing for villages in India. And it had already come to my school library, and we had been recommended it as course reading for the semester before that, because that semester was we had a Gandhian school to design. So we had gone to the villages and we had lived there and we had to design. So the professors that had recommended.
You lived in the villages for
a
while?
For a week. We went and visited a school in Vedchi. We all had different zones in Gujarat. So we all went to different places, like groups of 8 or 10. And I was in this place called Vedchi, which was a Gandhi ashram and a school there. And so so they had recommended this book. So I'd heard of his name as Popo Swami, of course, not as Popo Pingel, because that's what's written on the book. And so that sounded good. And I said, yeah, we're just here in Chennai, and I should go there. I had this feeling I must go to Auroville and talk to Popo since I'm here all the way. South India is far for us, from when we come from Gujarat. Yes. So I remember I started convincing a friend, because I couldn't go alone. I mean, I wasn't so comfortable, not knowing the language here. So I started convincing my one friend of mine from 9 o'clock in the morning, and 12 o'clock she agreed that we'll go to Pondicherry. And that person who got the photos, he said, it's very easy. You just take the bus from here and you get down at Auroville and you can meet Popo's living right there and you can meet him. So it sounded very, easy. So at 12 o'clock we were standing at the bus stand and took the bus. Around 4 o'clock we reached in Promise. And then, that time there was that old Tindivanam road. Right. With all the tamarind, beautiful.
I lived there in Promise.
Oh, yes, of course.
When I first came, Mother put me there.
Oh, yeah, it was one of the few early communities that were there and designed by Roger. So I landed there in the middle of nowhere. The driver said, this is Auroville. And I said, well, Auroville. Like, I couldn't believe it because, in all the photos, I mean, we had seen the drawings of this galaxy, and I expected something circular.
Oh, you were expecting,
Yeah, because we don't know. So I thought there'll be something, walkways and promenades. Anyway, so this was Auroville, and then we walked in there, and then we found, luckily it just happened as is, destiny. So then Popo had already left Promise in 1980. So it was 6 years already before that he was not living there anymore. But luckily on that day, his son Miro had come to play with some of the children there because he was brought up with them. He was growing up with them. So once in a while, Popo would bring them for a day. They would play there. So that day, Miro had come there. So he was going to come and pick him up. So that's how it is. Wow. And then I landed here slowly, came back and we did so I applied to him for training with this friend. And that's how, so it was all about architecture. I mean, there was nothing about Mother and Sri Aurobindo or anything in the beginning. Yeah. But there was something about Auroville that was very appealing to me from the, as you lived here. I lived 6 months at that time in Bharat Niwas in a little student's guest house that was there. And slowly, of course, Popo played a big role because often we would be sitting, we did an archaeological dig with him, excavation. Oh. And evenings he would be sitting there and telling us all his stories. And of course he was loving, a very interesting entertainment for us. And so it was very slowly, Auroville grew on me. I think one of the nice times I experienced was at the amphitheater when there was bonfire, because we were there for 15th of August. And then I came back on the 1st of January also. And that was really amazing experience to see this energy there. It was much smaller than what it is now, but it was very special to be there, and with this fire and Mate Mandir in the background and all these the international aspect of Auroville actually hit me before the whole philosophical and spiritual aspect of it. And I really enjoyed my time because I was, I was not brought up in a very orthodox family, so it was very easy for me to. Yeah, we traveled a lot as a kid. I was in Kenya for 4 years, and Delhi, as like I said, I studied. So I moved many places. So it was and we were not very like orthodox religious, kind of family. Like I said, my grandfather was a doctor, so he had already moved away from a lot of rituals and very simple. We are Jains actually, born a Jain, so Jainism doesn't believe in a lot of rituals, and it's very austere religion in that sense. So that helped, of course. I was very open and I enjoyed this international atmosphere and letting to know new people and experiencing everything that Auroville could give in those days.
Now, what was the year?
I was 87 when I stayed 6 months.
87.
Yeah.
And when did you come back?
So then I, of course, had to go back, and I wasn't sure if I'll come back, but then I did. It kind of, when you go back and you see the difference when you go back, and that happens to a lot of students who go back. They can't stop talking about Auroville in their schools. Everybody knew that we had been to Auroville, and we were all the time like in Auroville is like this. So anyway, eventually I took my final year's project here. We could decide where our projects. So I did a project on the Gandhi statue, that whole area in Pandi, Gandhi statue, Nehru statue, a rejuvenation of that area with that Duan, those two circular buildings, the lighthouse and all that. So that was my final year project. And so I had to come back for that and do a lot of research. And of course, I was happy to be back in Auroville. And then I did my thesis. We have a diploma thesis, which is a research thesis. In SEPT, it's a research thesis, so I could decide my topic, and I decided to do it on Matra Mandir and the Great Pyramid, and comparing the form, structure, and energy of the two buildings.
Oh my gosh.
Proportions. Yeah, it was amazing. And then I also got a little grant from Center of Indian Studies at that time through Astor, because I had to find excuses to come back here, and I convinced my parents. So this was a good excuse. I'm getting a scholarship, So that was, I stayed that time a little longer. And then I came back after I finished my studies, I came back in 1990 to work then finally in Auroville.
And you stayed?
Yeah, I stayed.
Since then?
Yeah, but it was still, it's not so simple. Of course, you think, ideally in your mind, everything is, but it's a process to join Auroville. I mean, to actually join Auroville with everything that you can give. So it took time. I mean, in 1990 I came, and then 92 we built our house, Popo and I together, our house in 2 years. And I did Udavi school with Popo, which was another project we worked together. But then I really wanted to go to Europe because in architecture we study a lot of European architecture. And it's our big ideal, and all the masters are there, and it was quite, and then of course Germany, because of Popo, I had some contact to some places, organizations where I could apply for scholarships, and I found a very good course which was on appropriate technology and extension skills. So it was a quite interesting course, because looking for South-South cooperation rather than North-South cooperation. And it was building people. I was the only architect in that course in that particular year. And I was also the first Indian and the first woman to join that course, because it was just started in 88 by one professor who was really very forward-looking and had a vision to he thought this is what the world needs, not this, not always people going from the west to the east or to the south, but like people collaborating, going back to their countries and taking back things from Germany, but using it in their own countries rather than staying, in the West, because he wanted people to go back. And So anyway, I was the only architect. It was a very interesting course. It was to build project managers for development institutions like GTZ or SCAT or all these kind of institutions which were giving money to the so-called developing countries at that time. So I did. I got a full scholarship for that from German Academic Exchange Service, which was really good. I had 6 months of German, completely 5 hours of German, in a very good institute, Goethe Institute, which is like the best place to
Goethe.
learn German.
Yes.
Goethe Institute, yeah,
Yes.
in Bremen, and then my course was
In
in
Bremen.
Flensburg, yeah.
Okay.
So that was 2 years, and then in '95 I came back to Oroville after finishing my master's, and I also did my master's thesis on architecture, then on building biology, which is something also another special thing that I learned in Germany. And
Can you
which
talk just a little bit
yeah,
about
it's,
that?
I already knew a lot about many things that were being taught there because I practiced in Oroville for 2 years already with Popo. So I was aware about solar energy and wastewater and earth buildings and how. But that's what was being actually taught there to these multidisciplinary people, including I could calculate little micro hydro turbines, and I knew how to make a blade of a small wind turbine. And because people were coming from Nepal, from South, I had friends from Sudan, Palestine, from Peru, so everybody was very different. So they gave us 1 year of like kind of multi kind of speciality in different fields, including intercultural learning, including skills of how do you create a project, how do you write a proposal, and how do you keep timelines. It was like very kind of broad. And then the last 6 months we could actually select our topic and do a detailed thing. So there I decided to do on building biology, which is in short, it is like how do you find the balance between man, nature, and economy through when you're as an architect or when you're building, and how does building and the whole urban fabric, it's not just one building, it's like how do at policy level, at city level, at individual level, how does it affect our well-being as human beings. So the building is like the third skin, like we have our skin and our clothes, and then the building which envelops us all the time. So we are, it's important how we build. So it was all talking about all kinds of, it included physics, biology, chemistry, it included indoor air quality, it included electromagnetic fields. It was for India, now it's become quite important because at that time, 25 years ago, I don't think anybody was talking, or very few people were talking about things like static, electrostatic, materials that create, electrostatic fields or electromagnetic fields with all these gadgets and microwave and. So it was a big thing. I really enjoyed learning, and it was a lot of physics also. You could actually measure fields, in volts per meter, and you had instruments, and you could see how human beings are affected because we are all also we are actually also kind of say small cell, or because we're made of a lot of water, and our stimuli is all electric impulses. No, like we are like we are direct current batteries actually in a sense. Otherwise, how if I want to move my hand, I need to send this impulse to the brain, and that's all with little electric, very small.
Yeah.
So that's affected by when you have all these gadgets around you. And so so it was quite, for me it was a big thing. I knew a little bit about it through Popo because he had some friends who were doing it, but like this I could really go into depths of that. And then when I came back, I of course applied it to my architecture, whatever I was doing as much as possible. My dream when I came back was like to start an institute of Baubiologie in India, because they didn't have anything, but everything was in German, and I had to translate everything into English.
You became fluent in German?
Oh yeah, I was.
I see.
Was very fluent because I was.
Well, of course, you were Popo also.
And
yes.
yeah, but living in Germany is the best way to learn.
That's the best way.
And like I said, all the literature was in German. So I wrote my master's thesis in English because I knew I wanted people in India to read it. So I had to translate a lot of it into English. So it was a lot of work, but in the end, yeah. So it was there, but I had this dream. But when I came back, I realized I can do it. I tried a lot in Auroville. I would put something in the news and notes and about electromagnetic fields and how it affects us. But then eventually I realized that I can either do my practice and build with these principles, or I can build up an institute. But I can't do both. It would be very difficult to. So I decided to build, because building is also addictive, and building on the site. Like, I remember my first project, and I was very lucky in Auroville because it really gave me all the opportunities that to kind of whatever I aspired to, I got those kind of projects. So my first projects were domes and vaults in mud bricks. And I found the clients, and I would say only solar energy, and otherwise we don't build for you. But people were ready, and I got slowly. And I remember, doing those first buildings where it really was very interesting that it gave me all these opportunities to build in Auroville. So I applied all those principles there. And I remember the first time, when I drew all these drawings, and then you go to the site and then you see it being built.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
What
just
a feeling, huh?
Yeah, it's really a feeling. It's a powerful feeling, actually, because people are going to occupy those buildings, and people are going to live their lives in it, and you have a chance to influence it to some extent. So it's quite, and I remember I would just love to be on the side. I had to really pull myself to go back to the table, to the drafting table. But yeah, it still remains to a great extent. I still enjoy going to the site. I'm always amazed that I'm not there and things are still going on. And it's always nice to come back and see, what's happened. So no, in that sense, I think Aurav has been just. I call it my karma kshetra now. It's really my place of being and growing, and it gives me everything that I think everything that I am today. A lot of it that I am today, not everything, because a lot of the baggage you still carry from your from your family and from your past, but a lot of it is Auroville, really. I mean, everything, and it's been an amazing journey to grow and to see, and it's never ending. It's very challenging. I think it's not easy to live in Auroville. I think you need to be very strong. You need to have a lot of faith and a lot of trust, and you really have to work on yourself, because it doesn't allow you to rest. I mean, it's to become comfortable. The moment you become a little comfortable, the next challenge is already there waiting for you. So, but I still think it's the best place. It's a privilege to live in Auroville.
When did you start your little firm?
Oh, well, I actually didn't. I never thought of it as a firm, and I still don't. I'm always. Actually, it took me years, to say the word client in Auroville. Yeah, I just couldn't. I never saw it because maybe because I was influenced. I mean, I see how the older, like Piero and Popo and Helmut, all these people who were there before us, how they worked, and how they built up slowly over years with nothing, And so I never saw architecture as a when people say it's like what do they call it? They call it it's a unit, or it's a commercial activity, or they say something. I'm always very no. I always want to say no. We're a service. I really don't feel that I'm doing. I don't think that we're doing commercial architecture. I really think that building for Auroville. So of course, there is a give and take. There is a transaction of money, but that's not the foreground. It's not in the foreground. So actually, Popo and I shared an office for 15 years, but we had our own projects, and we never had a name for our firm. Actually, nobody had names for their firms in the beginning.
So it's just a group of people.
Yeah, and it was like there was no need to have a name for your firm. But the thing is, I remember the first time we got a card printed, it was because we wanted to go to France and we wanted to enter Lascaux, these famous these cave paintings, which are in north of France, or no, middle of France, Lascaux, and they're very old. And so Popo thought if we had a little card with our names and Oroville Museum of Archaeology, maybe it'd be easier to get in there. So I remember we got some cards, silk screen printed in with Suzanne in Lumiere. Nobody was making cards at that time. There's no digital, there was no computers,
right.
so we had to get a silk screen print done and then so we had these first cards, and that even that time there was no name. It was just Oroville Museum of Archaeology and our names and architects. That was written there. Eventually, I think when we built, and then just as a fun, like we would because Popo likes to give names for everything. So it was called Naqshbandi, Studio Naqshbandi. It was called just Naqshbandi actually. And Naqshbandi is actually a Sufi sect of designers. So that was a nice name, but it was just because we had to write something on the drawing, so we did that. And eventually, when I decided to make my own office, because I realized that living and working in the same house, and it was small. We just could have one trainee or two trainees maximum, and I realized it was getting all too tight. And then I wanted a computer. I kind of got a computer because my father died and he had a computer and it was lying at home for years. So my mom said, just let's get rid of it. I said, no, I'll take it. So I brought a computer here, and there's no place to keep. We hadn't designed for anything like that. Everything was 12-volt DC in our house, because of electromagnetic fields. And Popo was like, no, he doesn't even like the aesthetic of having those beautiful drafting tables and then suddenly having this monitor there. So I was like, trying to fit in there. And then I realized it's not going to work over years. And then I said, okay, I need a place. I knew that at some point I would like to have my own studio. And so this was, I think, 2008 when I finally built. And then I had to give it a name because by then Oroville had changed and everybody had names, and more and more we had cards, and so then it got stuck, Studio Naqshbandi.
How did you first meet HP
Oh,
and get involved with Oro University?
HP. Actually, HP came through Suman. I don't know if you know him, Suman Kachru. He was one of he was, I think, his kind of site engineer, or he was the engineer who was kind of involved in it, and he was handling a lot of things like getting all the permissions and getting people on, and also checking everything like what Sawmill does now.
What Sawmill
Yeah.
does, okay.
And he was already in touch with Bimal because Bimal Patel was doing that design for the total layout for the 67 acres
For the university.
for our university, the master plan. And I think Sumant I think he is from SEPT, if I'm not mistaken. He studied SBST, like he studied at the School of Building Science and Technology. I studied at School of Architecture, but it's all the same campus. So I guess he must have heard of me. They knew, of course, the Oroville connection was there. But since I was from School of Architecture, SEPT as well, and he was from there, and he might have heard of. So he actually introduced me to HP. He brought me in into, and then of course HP. That time he was also not coming so often to Oroville, I think.
No.
So I remember because many things I would say, you know this, and no, I don't know. I said, okay, we'll go there. So I remember there were many times when I would, go with HP somewhere or the other, and say like meet people.
To see something, meet people.
To see something, yeah. So slowly, HP was quite, it took some time to kind of start the project. And you never, as an architect, it's always like, I always say it's a juggling game, because you're always a juggler. So you never know which project is going to actually take off and not. So when they first approached me, of course, I said yes, but it took me some time, or it took us some time to really take off with the project.
And was it specifically for the Integral Yoga Center, or was it other aspects?
No, it was always, and I was very happy actually. That's what with Sumant, I think, or was it before? I mean, I think when I looked at the totality of the project, and I looked at all what they wanted to do there, and and I came up with this idea that like there's so many aspects to this whole Oro University, and because it's based on integral yoga, it's like I drew up a simile or like metaphor of like how it actually caters to all the for us, like, to the mental, to the vital, the physical, the psychic aspects of the being in the campus. So, there is the academic part, which is dealing with the whole mental part, and there is the physical, because there are a lot of sports and activities, and so I called my center, what the integral yoga center I always thought this is like the psychic of that center of, this is
And it
the
is.
psychic,
And
yeah.
it
And then,
is.
yes, I actually, because I think it's a very interesting project, because it actually tries to bring, mother, it puts Mother and Sri Aurobindo in the center of this Oro University, and it allows for a space, which has a lot of functions, but actually, in a sense, it also has, it's a place which can be also very it can be free space. It's like a no space kind of, it can absorb everything, and it doesn't have to, so it's very understated. I always felt this center has to be very sublime and very, very subtle. It has to be very understated. It doesn't have to shout for attention.
Quiet.
Yeah, very quiet. And also it fits with me and with my being and my personality. It's not to do a, like, I don't like to do buildings that are, just look at me, like that. It's nice to discover things. So I that's how the project developed, and I think the program is quite interesting, because what I loved was that it had these meditation centers. So these two kind of, we evolved a lot of the things together. I mean, now it's 5 years ago, so if you ask me all the
Yeah.
details, I might have forgotten
Yeah.
also already some things. But basically, the idea of the satsang was there, and then the idea of this cafe, what I call the Zen Cafe, or it's a place where you can meet people, but it's a very quiet space again. And that's where you see where I hope to see the power of architecture, because if you manage to build a space that automatically quietens down the people, that doesn't encourage them to talk loudly, or it's a place of contemplation. And then there are these two meditation places. One is like like this cave type of meditation, and one is the nature meditation. And for me, it was a privilege, or it is a privilege, because I always kind of thought of Matre Mandir as I kept it before me as an ideal when I designed.
I
So
see.
those caves are completely those with the petals in Matre Mandir. I kind of kept that, but he gave me, like, he wanted these four powers of the mother, so I developed it along those lines. And mother's given actually for each power, like Mahalakshmi, Ma Saraswati, she's given a color to it.
Yes.
And so I would like to bring that into these four chambers now that we have, which are, yeah. And then the other one, of course, in nature, that's easy for me, because I love to do landscaping, as you know. And I think architecture without interior and landscaping is like half finished work. And if you're lucky, that, I mean, we try for every project that we do, that I at least try to incorporate it. But if you're lucky, we managed to finish it well. So that was very beautiful, because with the water and
Yeah.
everything. So as you know, they changed the site 4 times, and every time I had to revise, and it's been a long process. But I must say, it hasn't been. In the end, I feel it just got better. With patience, we need to just deal with the time. It takes a little while, because every time you leave the project, you come back into it. It takes a while, and you forget sometimes some. But on the whole, I think it's actually led to a better solution.
And now it's happening.
Yeah, and then I'm really looking forward to that it should start soon. And once it started, I think it will take off. But they've been very nice. I think HP has been a good client till now. Very easy to work with, very, very flowing, listening, and it's very, very, very comfortable. Like, when he wants to make a point, he does. But generally, it's been very harmonious, which is great.
I want to ask you a bit about Orville today and Mother and Sri Aurobindo
Okay.
and Orville's relation to the yoga.
You'll get only my perspective, of course.
Fine.
So, it's a difficult question, because I think it's difficult to judge for anybody. I mean, any one of us. But one can only judge from oneself. I mean, or what one experiences, because otherwise it's not possible. So you want to know Auroville today and Mother and Shobindos and their place or their relationship to what is happening in Auroville today.
Yes.
Like, how does it?
And you might talk about yourself also a little bit.
Let's see. So, I see. Like I said, always to live in Auroville is an act of faith. So, if you really live there and if you really consecrate yourself to that place, which is already a rarity in today's world, I think it's very. That's one of our strong points, I think, because I think people who have come to Auroville have come intentionally, and they have made a choice. Of course, people make a choice also to go to New York or to London or to Delhi or whatever, but very often it's because of work or it's because of family or something. But this is different. This is like for an ideal that is higher than themselves, something that they can see that the world needs, and it's very high, the ideal of Auroville. And it takes you years to understand. I think I'm just kind of beginning to scratch what that ideal means. How do you actually put it in your life? So in that sense, I think all the people who are here in Auroville are somehow, consecrating their lives or their time, to Auroville. So that's already quite something to have in a place like this. And I think since it is a matter of faith, because we really don't know what is the right thing. I think, maybe we are parts of a puzzle, but we're just 2,700 people when we are supposed to be 50,000. So, we have to leave space for all those people who are going to come and who are going to contribute to Auroville and, going to bring new things. And of course, we have to work on ourselves in order to make ourselves the instruments, for whatever is to come or whatever is there. So in the end, I think it's all about how much you can do work on yourself and how you relate that to the collective. Because very often, sometimes you just want to, retract or just go into your cocoon, and just you're happy to do your sadhana, your yoga, whatever you understand under that, and whatever you're capable of. But that you can't rest in peace like that in Auroville. It may be a phase that you need to go through, but eventually you have to connect to the collective. But then again, what is connecting to the collective? I mean, there's so many ways of doing that. It's not just about going to meetings or being part of some groups or, contributing. There are as many ways as there are people. So it's difficult to say, who's doing what and whether it's right or wrong. I think the longer I live in Auroville, the more I think it's difficult, to judge anything from the external. And therefore, your question to say, where is Auroville, or, with in regard to Mother. I think Mother and Shabida is central to Auroville. I don't think that without them we cannot exist. So I'm pretty sure that whatever, when many times people ask me like 50 years and you're 2,500, especially, a lot of architects, but even because that's my circle, but even otherwise, a lot of people think, what is that, It's like, and then sometimes there are questions, should the government still be supporting such an experiment, and, do we deserve it, I always feel that the fact that we have survived 50 years and we are growing and we are attracting people, and if you see the amount of activities that happen in Auroville, and it's not just the activities, it's the passion which people work, everything, each thing that you see in Auroville, there is a real passion behind it. Most of the times, I can't say 100%, but so that is what makes a difference. It's like it's still it's alive. Auroville is alive and it's growing and it's attracting. I think that's a miracle. 50 years, you see experiments all over the world. What happens after 50 years? And we still feel that we're just starting. We're not. I personally, I don't think I'm not in a hurry to, say 50,000, because I'm one of those who believes that the process is as important as the product, or if not more important. So in Auroville, I don't think that we should be in a hurry to. People are coming. Everybody's doing their bit, and those who feel that they are very good at, being connecting to the external world, and bringing people. Everybody has to find their place. That's what she said. The
Yes.
right people in the right place at
Yes.
the right time.
Yes.
And that's divine anarchy, probably. But we haven't yet got there.
Yes.
So very often wrong people are in the wrong place at the wrong time. But things do happen. I mean, and I have a lot of faith there. I feel that when things are supposed to happen, they do happen. And you have to have that faith, and you have to have that commitment, and you have to not give up. And I see that. I've seen that in my own life, in my own little way of being in Oroville. And this is such a lived experience over years. And it's 25 years now. It's not short, but it's still the beginning, kind of, to say. But I see that whatever is like small things to big things, it's your inner aspiration that counts. And when that is true, then you get all the opportunities that you need to fulfill those, or to externalize those, or to manifest. And it's in every field, it's in every level. It's not just about my work, it's about everything in my life. I really feel that. But the point is to know your aspiration. That takes a lot of time. And to know yourself, I think this is the biggest challenge. The more you know yourself, the more clear it is what you need to do.
Have the works of Mother and Sri Aurobindo been important to you?
Oh, yes, of course. And without that, it's not possible to survive in Oroville, I think. To survive in Oroville. So I really think that.
What have you read?
Oh, yeah, I've
What
read.
are you reading?
I've read. Yeah, well, right now it's a crazy time, but yeah, I've read most of. I've read Life Divine and Synthesis, but that doesn't really count. You can read it 3, 4, 5 times,
Sure.
and it's not really. It's about what you take, and sometimes you just pick up something, and it can be a poem which can just touch you. Savitri. I mean, everything, there is a time for everything. I remember for years I wouldn't touch Savitri, because I thought, no, first time to. I started with the easy things, like what I thought was easy. So the questions and answers of Mother is easy, and of course all the other things like evening talks with Sri Aurobindo, or 12 years with Sri Aurobindo, that was like easy reading, and it was like it made it so alive for me, like Sri Aurobindo was just next. And then of course there were all the agendas, and then there were then I did a lot of things with Dipti. We read a lot of the Foundation of Indian Culture, and we read Mother on.
This is Dipti of last school?
Yeah.
Dipti Tiwari?
Yeah, Dipti Tiwari. We have a little group that we've been reading together since 11 years now, once a week. And that's been quite long, yeah. But I think it's nice to read, and I understand. I mean, I'm a person who likes. I think the idea of satsang is very interesting and very important. So when you meet in a group, it's a different kind of sharing, and also because if you're all from Oroville, very often we make a lot of tangents, and it's about what things are happening in Oroville, and each one brings something to the table from their own fields, whether it's been education or architecture or whatever people are working in, and that makes it richer. So it's not like really gossip, but it's more like questions that people bring to the table. How does things work in Oroville in relation to what we are reading? So it makes it quite rich that way. It's a dialogue, It's not really it's not a one-way thing. So that was quite enriching to read. But I wanted to say about Savitri, like for example, many years I didn't touch it, and then at one point I was going to the chamber to do some duty, and I had a very nice time at like 12 to 1 in the afternoon. This was many years ago. It was very nice, air conditioned, It was hot, and nobody would come. Almost nobody would come between 12 to 1. And so I used to take Savitri to read there, and I don't know what happened, but suddenly it was like I would just open, and it was like reading prose, suddenly. It was like everything kind of just made sense. It was amazing. So it was like, I think it's something, it has to be an inner desire or aspiration or something that it just opens, And so but I do find, like I said, I started this thing with Dipti because I requested her because I wanted to do Foundation of Indian Culture with her. But one of the things was that a lot of people, my friends, a lot of them would say that, oh, we don't read Sri Aurobindo, we can't read, he's so difficult, and mother is a little bit more accessible, but Sri Aurobindo not. And I said, how can that be? We live in Auroville and we don't read Sri Aurobindo, so this is a basic. So then we started this group, like slowly. So these are the kind of things that, also. But now I'm at a point where I want to read on my own. Like, I feel, so it's different times and different things. And so, yeah, reading is, I think it's like darshan every day. You need to do that. I don't always manage. Sometimes it's quite crazy with running an office and doing all the things that we do. Because Auroville, a lot of people do a lot of things. Yeah.
You hired local people also? Trained local people, architects?
Yeah, right. It started very small. So basically, in the beginning, it was just one or two trainees who would come, but over the years, I really feel that I wished for it. I wished that I would have somebody from the local area and somebody who would, could grow and then become part of my office, and it would be interesting. And actually, like I said, you just have to have an aspiration and it happens. So right now I have somebody in the office, and he's a local, he's a self-made guy. I think he just studied till 10th, and I'm not even sure he passed 10th, but he's been studying, he's been working in different architecture firms, even he's been to Bangalore and he's been to Goa, and so he's worked with a lot of architects, and but he's from Kodakarai, and he's worked like maybe 15 years in different firms, and he's a very good model maker. So actually that's why he was very sought after. I mean, like, people wanted him, but then they would always give him just models to make, and so when even I called him in for many models many years ago also, but then I felt that's a pity, like, if he must grow through this, he can't just be making models. And he was so good at models, you would give him a little drawing and he could make models on his own. And quite challenging, quite interesting how he would think of all the details and how he wanted to do things. So I got him into the office, and now he's here. Yeah, he's working, and I'm giving him, now he's doing working drawings, and I've given him the IYC drawings, to do the working drawings, because we have to create the whole set from beginning.
Yes.
And in the beginning I was like, oh, should I give it? And before last week he asked me, do you trust me, like I can do the working drawings? And I said, yes, okay, you try. But sometimes his thinking is not like, he doesn't think things through like that, but it's a bit of training. So yes, I am very happy to work with, but I tell you, the best people that in terms of the contractors that we work with, they're all local. Of course, yeah. These trainees and people, they come and go, and they come from all over India, all over the world. In fact, I've had people from Portugal, from London, from all different, Russian girl who worked with me for 2 years. But that's fine. But I think the contractors who work with us, luckily they're all local. Also, the people who work on our sites are still very local. They're from the local area. If you see, this is almost like in big cities, it doesn't happen anymore. They get migrants to Canada. It's such a sad thing, They're not connected. And we are so blessed with such good contractors. I mean, the people whom I'm working with, like who did Cottage or, my studio and Aikido Dojo, these are people who are like locally, they're just local people, not studied, but they're I think, they are not only good workers and thinking people, but they're good human beings. I mean, it's a pleasure to work with them. They're honest, they're sincere, they enjoy their work. And I tell you, another thing that's so important is they have pride in their work. And this is what people lose very often in the cities. They're just doing it for money, but they're not doing it that in the skill, that hand, that what you do with your hand, you have to be proud of. In India, it's sadly, we still have this kind of idea, which is much more than the cities than in the villages, than doing something with the hand, or maybe also a lot in the villages now with all the media and all that. Doing something with your hand is like, considered, looked down on.
Yeah.
And this is something I learned a lot from Popo, because he comes from this German, handicraft. He's like a carpenter, and before he was an architect. So I learned how to appreciate the people on the site a lot. They are my actually biggest partners, I really appreciate them, and I always take them on board. I mean, in fact, they take me on board, or we take each other on board, but it's a really good working together. It's really a pleasure, really, and we are lucky. And this is also what I think we have to thank the people who came in the beginning. People like, all these people who came in the earlier years. And not only the architects, there were a lot of other people who were not architects who were building with their hands, or all these people like Johnny and who built capsules. I mean, so many people in the green belt who built on their own, and they made a whole kind of culture of working, which is work dealing with matter, bringing it to a perfection, and not giving up, trying to innovate with what is there, simplicity, not and they really worked just for them. It was not about publishing, and it was not about climbing a ladder and your career and all that didn't exist. Unfortunately, that is a bit like quite prevalent now in Oroville. I mean, when you ask me about Oroville today, but I think that's also just a phase. I don't think that it's going to stay, but yeah, it is right now. It's quite, at least in the architecture circle, it's very prevalent. You get yourself published, your projects are here and there, and you get awards, and it's okay for a while, you can do it, but in the end you realize it doesn't really get you further. So in the end you come back to track, hopefully.
Yes.
But yeah.
Do you have any interaction with the ashram?
Oh yes, of course, because of my projects. But even otherwise, I think, how should I say? First of all, Golconda is my biggest. Golconda, when I stayed first time in Golconda, it was transformational for me that week when I stayed in Golconda. So for me, that's ashram. I mean, of course, it's mother and it's everything that goes into that building, but it's amazing. Secondly, my whole interaction because of Cottage, the restaurant, and Manojda in particular, because we had, of course, like every building goes through its tough times, and we had also a few little problems which we had to solve, and Manojda was always like there, and he's like, somehow for me, he's a person who is very, how should I say in words, it's difficult, but I just like the way he is as a person, as a human being, and he's carrying so much on his shoulders, probably, but he carries it very lightly, and he's always ready for a smile. I think that's very important, that, there is this sense of, I think Shri Aurobindo said something I've written on my table. It says, a God who cannot laugh would not have created this world, or something like that.
Yes.
That laughter is so important.
Yes.
So I think that smile and that being, which is there's still this sense of ease, like being that grace of that I really admire in him. That so yeah, I mean, and there are a lot of friends in the ashram. I used to sing. Oh yeah, that was one big thing for me. Yeah,
I have never heard that.
Shobhadi was my
really
introduction. I was one of the few people who was allowed to come to the ashram music rooms. I mean, I had a regular lesson in the ashram with Bashabda, who was teaching me sitar. First, Shobhadi used to come to Oroville, and she used to teach us that was like 95, 96. And then when I wanted to learn, or maybe even 92, maybe before I went to Germany. And then I came back and I wanted to learn sitar. And she allowed me to learn from Bashabda. So I used to come for years. Once a week, I would take the bus from Oroville. There's only one bus a week, so my class was scheduled according to that bus. And then, I had all these years I was so fortunate to have Bashabda teaching me. And so I've always, and then I have friends in Golconda. Amra is a dear friend. But there's so many people. And I think also Popu's connection has helped me, He has been with the press, because the press brought out his first book, that the one on Rammed Earth is Rural India, and it got the President's Award for the best publication of the year. Like one of the, it was a very good public, because it was sketches and it was very well done in 6 different languages, including Tamil and Hindi. And so that was there is a connection there as well. No, I haven't been touched by this ashram Auroville
very
thing
good.
somehow at all.
Very good.
It's not in my consciousness, and I don't see any difference. I just see it as two different things that came about by, with Mother and Sri Aurobindo, and they have two different roles to fulfill, and both have their. I mean, I like it when I come to just the same way the ashram people, when they come to Auroville, for them it's like a big, like a picnic and an adventure, a little bit going somewhere else. It's the same for me when I come and stay in Golkon. I think that's the biggest and the best time I can give to myself, instead of traveling anywhere and looking at all these beautiful cities. And the best thing I can do is come to Golkon and stay for a week, because that's there is nothing, there is nothing better. And that building is beautiful. You really see how a building can actually radiate an atmosphere. If what you put into the building can actually stay there. It's not just material. It's more than, it's the spirit that's there in the building, and you can't but not experience it, I think. So I have a lot of faith. Actually, Golkon has inspired so many people. Like when I talked to Piero, for him, Golkon gave him the strength to go on with the work in Matra Mandir, because when he saw that Golkon could be done with people who were not architects and not contractors, and done by sadhaks, then he felt that he could also do Matra Mandir. I mean, Matra Mandir could be built with people who were not, we didn't have to give it to a contracting company, like big company, and people could do it. And that's what's so different about Matra Mandir. It's not just the architecture, that's okay. I mean, but the fact that it was built by people, by every Aurovillian, could go and work there. I think that's what makes Matra Mandir different. And still it's going on, people can contribute, go, and so many people are working in Matra Mandir, doing the gardens and this and that, maintenance. I think that's important, that it's not just something that is beside. So same with Golkon, the love and the care with which that building is maintained, it talks back to you. So that's the power of architecture, actually, in the end.
Mona, it's been an honor to talk with you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.